AskReddit by Umpatoquarker007. Which conspiracy theory makes you laugh? That the Disney movie Frozen was only made so that if you look up Walt Disney Frozen it doesn't bring up any search results about Walt Disney's cryogenically frozen head. If this were real, it would be genius NGL. Maybe Bigfoot is blurry, and that's the reason nobody has ever taken a good photo of him? There is a large, out-of-focus monster roaming the countryside. It will always be flat Earth. Makes no sense. A massive conspiracy that would require the knowing compliance of so many different people and professions. All for the greater good of, what exactly? Why would this information be kept from the people? The microchips inside of a vaccine conspiracy theory. It's logically stupid. A microscopic nanochip that can be perfectly drawn from a vaccine vial and passed through the tip of a needle, that has a power source that can not only last forever without charge, it has a 5G Bluetooth chip that can broadcast wide and far to constantly track you. If we has that tech it would be sold widely in 2 dozens of applications. Not to mention why anyone would bother developing such a thing in secret when everyone is totally willing to carry an electronic device with a microphone and GPS with them at all times anyways. Atheists are using satellites to intercept prayers so they can't reach Jesus, at Pastor Alex Love. This is the greatest thing I've ever heard. Birds aren't real started as a joke, and now it seems like some people believe it. That's pretty funny to me. Many a person has discussed this at length around the Thanksgiving table, while eating turkey. That JFK Jr. isn't dead, and that he was going to make himself known, and be pro-MAGA in Dallas, Texas where his father was assassinated. I'm genuinely surprised they haven't all flocked to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and be like, we were a bit off, but close enough. That Pepsi and McDonald's have aborted babies in them. Yes, let's make food out of highly illegal, limited, impossible to get human fetuses for no reason, only to sell them for $1.50 each. That makes perfect sense. My friend believes the one about McDonald's, and I will admit the idea of this is the only thing that cuts down on my fast food cravings. Drugs and Halloween candy. Every year there are warnings, and every year I laugh. Drugs are expensive. No one is wasting money giving them to kids. I don't even want to spend money on candy for random kids. Stumbling upon a conspiracy theory forum like a decade ago and finding a 100+ page post explaining that all the planes on 9/11 were actually holograms projected around cruise missiles was a work of art. Just a horde of morons arguing with an even dumber group of morons. This one is it for me. It's unbelievable that people believe that it was an inside job. It was live on TV for the better part of a week. Explosives rigged in the building brought the towers down. I've read countless theories, and it's just amazing. You know the kind of rigging it would take to bring 2 buildings that size down? It would take years of planning and months to plant it all. That the moon landings were hoaxed. That, somehow, the Soviet Union would have kept quiet about it. If a major conspiracy, all the workers and companies putting the equipment together knew it would fail, but were in on it, and so told no one. If a minor conspiracy, that everything was built, they just weren't sure it would work, so they faked it with a handful of people somehow. Kubrick is usually in this one. But the moon surface he made was different from the one actually found on the moon. That there's always a reason why you can tell that photos made by astronauts on the moon were fake, though, if they went somewhere, why not just take pictures? But the different methods of faking were contradictory. Why fake a photo one way for one picture, and another way for another picture? This is supposed to be a hallmark of a major conspiracy planning all the details. The sheer number of people who would be in on this makes this completely impossible. We're talking 1,000 people, give or take. My pet conspiracy theory is that many white American families do indeed have Native American ancestry, but DNA testing services keep a lid on it because there's nobody more annoying than a white person who thinks they are part Indian. So this is a thing I deal with. The purest white Caucasian person on earth will inevitably have a few harmless DNA variants that happen to be rare in Caucasians, but more common in Native American populations, just because that's what happens statistically when you screen for hundreds of thousands of SNPs. The genetics computer looks at this and reports this mathematically insignificant finding as 1% Native American ancestry because that looks cool and that's what pays the bills for the testing company. Holographic moon plasma moon. Way too many people believe the moon is a self-illuminating luminaire made of plasma. Also that the face of the moon is the reflection of Earth showing the true shapes of the continents. Bonus is because as plasma it is impossible to land on, so that confirms the moon landings are a hoax. I have never heard this. Sounds like sci-fi fantasy leaking. Tupac living in Serbia. Everyone knows that Tupac goes by the real S now S. Chemtrails. There's tons of pictures of cockpits taken professionally and by regular people, and yet no one has seen or shown a chemtrails button or gauge, which would be on every plane. The pilots control it from the vaccine chip connected to them are in their red blood cells. Holocaust deniers. People like this don't need proof or logic. It's about denying the atrocities against the people they hate, so it's easier to convince others to do it again. My favorite was one I heard from a madman who was convinced that COVID was not only a hoax but that it was cooked up by Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland. He insisted that he had spoken to undertakers who swore that no extra people were dying. He believed that Nicola Sturgeon spread the lies to make sure people ordered lots of fish and chips delivered during lockdown. The chip shops are getting rich and sharing the profits with her. Simple. In the 90s there was a rumor that Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson were the same person. Speaking of the 90s, that Marilyn Manson removed one of his ribs to fell it himself. We haven't been to the moon. Every country across the globe is in on a big lie together, and they all agreed that America gets to be the country who got to the moon first. The world can't agree on anything, let alone letting America win the space race. JFK wasn't assassinated. His head just did that on its own. I hate when my head does that. Totally ruins my day. A co-worker tried to tell me once that Marvel Film Studios cause covered so the timeline after the blip would be closer to real life. Skinwalker Ranch. There's some awful conspiracy documentary and they exaggerate every little detail, then use it to create an obscure new theory for them to test and verify. Little hint, they just launch small rockets in their vacant desert lot and deploy expensive equipment for fun to spend investors' money. That's basically the whole show. There's totally a gravitational anomaly here, so we're going to launch 2 rockets at each other horizontally and measure the changes in their times 3 minutes of a terrible theory, 1 minute of watching their rockets launch in pitch black dark at night time, followed by 3 minutes of explaining how the result of their rockets test proves there's a collection of dark matter located stationary in one place below ground right where their gravity anomaly is located. The show is horrible, but I watch it for entertainment. That walkable cities are part of a government plot to turn cities into prison camps. First off, why? And second, it's way easier to control where people drive than where they can walk. People walked from one end of the earth to the other across mountains, swamps, deserts and everything in between. You can't stop most cars from going anywhere by just shutting down gas stations and putting up roadblocks. Thirdly, the way we design cities right now is way easier to control people. Metro areas are split into nicely controlled segments by artificial terrain, freeways, that you can easily use control access because they limit overpasses and cross traffic. This theory gives a lot of credit to city planners, and I'm sorry I've been to Boston lol. We should get the people who think this an overhead heli tour. reptilian overlords. Supposedly that's rooted in hateful stereotypes against Jewish people, as well. That NASA killed Michael Jackson. MJ's moonwalk became more famous than the actual moonwalk NASA performed. They hated MJ for this and they killed him.